Dzień dobry Państwu. Witam na jubileuszowym 60. Festiwalu Filmowym w Krakowie. Witam w zatłoczonej sali kina Kijów. Cieszę się, że zostali Państwo na spotkaniu z twórcami. Zresztą i tak na Brackiej pada deszcz. So I'm thrilled to welcome here the directors of some of the films you have seen. Could you just tell your names and the names of your films? Maybe that would be the good way to introduce you. Could you? Sorry.
Hi, I'm Maya Gerik, and I made the short animated film Average Happiness.
My name is Verena Wagner, and I made the movie Keep Shifting. It's a documentary.
I'm Upamanyu, co-director of Wade alongside.
And
Kalp's video is stuck, I think, but yeah, Kalp is also the co-director of an animated short from India called Wade.
Hello, and we have just with us arrived Shoko Hara. The director of Just a Guy, and hello Christo, the director of Nina. So I'm wondering, I thought we could start with the film Wait, because
Sure.
hello,
sorry.
Because Wait is we've just started that, and I was just saying that Wait is an animation which shows the dystopian vision of Calcutta after climate catastrophe. So,
Right.
And for years, the world leaders seemed to ignore the warnings of scientists, how real the risk is. I'm wondering, how do you feel presenting your film now in times of pandemic, in times of when, the world leaders ignored the signs of the other catastrophe, which were called by scientists?
Well, it's a tale as old as time, really. Like it's a permanent issue where people will make movies about how warnings are ignored and how the eventuality is. I mean, we're not proud of the fact that the way we've represented Calcutta is almost exactly how Calcutta looks right now in the middle of the pandemic. It's deserted and it's except there's no water yet. But today there's a huge cyclone in Calcutta as well, and that's another major problem that's happening as we speak right now. And it doesn't feel good. Obviously, we don't want to go towards that as a new normal in any way. And the whole idea of making such films is to kind of make sure that we have conversations and we try to make sure we don't get to that point over time together. So.
Yes, and and do you think that after this pandemic, after all the lockdown, because India is in lockdown, it's still in lockdown, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And after all of it, do you believe that, we will change in a way, the way we are consuming goods, exploiting environment? Do you feel some hope in this quite tragic situation we're all in now?
What do you think, Kalp?
I don't know, to be honest, I don't know if there'll be a lot of change, but it won't be the same for sure. And I know the way things are being used, since there are so many people here, it's very difficult to sort of say what exactly is going to happen, because at least people like me and us, we are at least indoors safe, but there are hundreds and thousands who aren't, and that's the major chunk who are actually suffering through this. So it's really difficult to say anything. It's really uncertain at this point, at least in my area of the country, in this part.
Yeah. Especially that what I heard is that we have the same situation here, that the government is in a way taking advantage of health crisis to pursue with their laws and especially with kind of Muslimophobia. That's in your case. In our case, it's nationalism. isn't it?
Yes, of course. And in Wade, again, that's one of the main things that it tries to show is that the people who contribute the least to problems like climate change are the people who will end up suffering the most because of it. Like probably people with the least consumption, with the least carbon footprint. In other words, poor people, marginalized people, people who don't have access to urban excess in any way, probably will be the first people who will have to move because a river has flooded. They will probably be the first people to be evacuated because a storm has hit, because they don't have the safety of concrete buildings, safe enclosures. They don't have the money to access evacuation flights. So there is a major disbalance in terms of who is contributing to the problem, but who gets to buy their way out of the problem first. So that's another.
Something that's happening today as well because of the cyclone.
Yeah.
That's what's important, and that's what's important in the film, that it takes place on the streets with poor people. I would like to ask Maya, because you made a film, quite an abstract film about statistics, which suddenly start to dance all the charts that we see every day in media. I'm wondering, do you feel that in a way we created this virtual reality of statistics, forgetting that behind them there are lives of the people?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there is a connection to the real life and real world, because all of the statistics are found footage, and I just changed maybe some colors or sometimes also some data. But I mean, it is a complete other thing, because it's more about the facts. I mean, it is the criticism about statistics that you can try to measure everything in the world and try to fix it in these graphics, but it is also a kind of a fantasy about finding beauty in something that is our daily life. I mean, we see these diagrams everywhere, and I wanted to give them another life, like a body and some eroticism and a different way of expression that I see in these graphics. Yeah, and now with these pandemic situations, of course, we are all again surrounded with these graphics in a complete different way. But I was really keeping myself out of the whole news and statistics circle, because I have a little child, and I just wanted to keep some kind of normality and at least a bit cheerful situation for this family. And now I start looking at all this information and about all the news about COVID-19. So it's a bit like I shifted. I was like slowing down the news process, and as we went to the countryside in Switzerland, where things are quite okay, of course it's complete different situations than in other part of the world, I could like somehow allow myself this kind of approach until now.
Because that's true that in a way all the statistics we see every day, they become the aesthetics of modern world.
Absolutely, yeah.
And this virtual.
And I mean, the idea came out of a spelling error, because I just wrote instead of organigram that I had to use in another proposal for another project, I wrote onanigram, and onani means masturbation in German. So this is how this whole idea came, to give some eroticism and physical approach to these pie charts and bar charts and curves.
I'm wondering, because, Verena, your film, we're just speaking about this virtual reality of statistics of media. Your film is your documentary is showing the world, I would say, on the contrary, the very real world of workers who are handcrafting glass. Was it also the way to get back to reality instead of media reality we're normally surrounded by?
How Yeah, when I started to make movies, the first things I was curious about was always the real world and the real people. And so for me, it was a movie I made. It's about glass blowers, and they are like 1 or 2 hours away from here. And it was more for me, I'm always interested in just normal work or handcrafts. And so I went there one time before, and I was really impressed from the big hall. And it was more the reason that I wanted to spend time there and get to know the guys who are working there. And so it was not so much about thinking, I just had the feeling, oh, I want to stay there for longer. And then, yeah.
That was the question I was asking myself when I was watching the film. I mean, I was thinking of, are they really this kind of working class people who are in a way excluded, or rather, well, conscious men covered with the tattoos, because they're all covered with the tattoos, who just chose different lifestyle?
And so, can you repeat the question?
Well, I was wondering if there are those, well, just working class people who are struggling to well, just to cope with the reality, or rather just conscious men who chose their lifestyles differently than you know, people working in corporations.
Okay. I mean, the most of them, they are Czech people, and half Czech, more German and some Czech people. And for them, it's more, I asked them, I had some interviews, I didn't use it, but I had some, and I asked kind of this question. And for them, first of all, they do the job because they have to earn money. Mm-hmm. And but when I asked and I said, but it's a really special job. And so they said, yeah, the deepest motivation was always they do the job because it's really, there are just 3 factories in the world who are still producing glass like them. And so they are also proud to do like this work.
Because this is also quite incredible in your film, because it could be much more social. You didn't dig in the subject of migration. You didn't, I don't know, depict their everyday life and their struggles, but somehow you showed the contrast between those, well, quite a strong man and the beauty of the alchemy of the process of creating glass. Yeah, of creating glass.
Yeah, I think this was also something what I was really impressed from, that there are just men working. There is from 17 men, there is 1 woman working. And so these guys, they don't, first of all, they don't talk much. And when they talk, then it's more about minor things. And I really liked it, the contrast between the filigree glass and the strong man. And what I tried in the movie is just to be there and to get a feeling how they are working, who they are, to be in the moment where they are.
Because it seems what also is important, and it's both in weight and shifting, but also in Nina. By Christo, because you show the world from the perspective of most vulnerable. Christo portrayed a girl, a Roma girl, who is trying to survive in the city. Exactly. I would like to ask if you wanted to show the modern reality from the perspective of most vulnerable people. We don't hear you. Wait. Could you unmute?
Okay, I think now it's okay. Yeah, it's actually this film was shot in one town in Bulgaria, which have the most big community of Roma people on the Balkans. And it's called Stulipinovo. Stulipinovo is the name of this district with around like 50,000 of people living in a not so big district, but it's the biggest in the Balkan countries. So we have several scenes shot in this district, and yeah. But the interesting is that I try to hide the most miserable parts of this district.
Which, excuse me, which parts?
The most miserable.
Because you didn't want to shock with the poverty. You wanted to.
Yeah, it's really hard to show these minority groups. Yeah.
Because there is this. She describes well the person she lives with as Calderaș. Could you explain what's Calderaș?
Yeah, it's an ethnic group, a Roma ethnic group, and yeah, it's there are like 4 or 5 groups with different roots. Sometimes they speak a bit different language, and yeah, their root is from all of their roots. They came from India, but they have different paths. That's the different Calderaș. They're one of the richest Roma in the Balkans.
But also, what you show is this lack of institutions which would help such children to change their life paths.
It's I don't know. It's talking about this for me. It's how to say it? It's really complicated here in Bulgaria. I think also in the other Balkan countries, but it's really complicated, and for me will be really difficult to talk about the institutions and to show them, and it could be very I don't know. I lost the word, but will be very different to make a good expression of the Roma people.
Because they are somehow unseen by the institutions.
I mean, you know, the institutions can see them only if they need it. I mean, not the Roma people, the institutions. So after, let's say that before a week, the 4 of the Sofia biggest districts with Roma people was closed because the government said that the biggest places with the COVID-19 are in the Roma districts, and they blocked their districts for 3 weeks. And the people, all of these people, most of them, they work outside the ghetto. So it was really appropriate, at least.
In a way, what Upamaniu and Kalp said, that pandemic is also.
Yeah, the government treated them really, really bad about this. Really, with very racistic, actually. Yeah, because that was the only districts in Sofia that was closed, that was banned. Yeah.
And among the films that were shown in this set of films was also the film by Shoko, which is also very disturbing, intriguing. It's animated documentary about women who were exchanging intimate letters with Richard Ramirez, the serial killer, murderer, and you were one of them, which you say explicitly in the film. I'm wondering, well, first of all, why did you stick pen to paper and decide to write a letter to murderer in death row?
Yeah, actually, it wasn't a letter. There was a few pictures I took together with Sarah, who is also in the film, and with some few notes like greeting from Germany and stuff. And back then, I didn't know much about Richard Ramirez. I just heard about him from Sarah. She asked me to take pictures with her because she wanted to do him a favor. Because she knew that he is into feet and Asian girls, and it was 2011, I guess, and Richard Ramirez was already end of his 50s, and I'm not attracted to old men, but it was more out of curiosity, I guess. I felt like I would send a picture to a celebrity or something, and yeah, I was curious if he would answer. And I joined this photo shooting more to please my friend Sarah, less to please Richard Ramirez, I guess, because with her view of life and her charisma back then, I looked up to her and found her really attractive. Yeah.
But you found him or her?
Her.
Her, yes.
I thought maybe I'm bisexual or something, but yeah,
then,
I figured out that I'm.
But then you kept contact with him?
No, he sent back a letter, 2 pages of handwritten letter, but I was so scared then that he might know someone else, like Charles Manson, or to do something against me, because that would mean that I would have to write down my real address, and then I was also scared. I mean, I didn't know that it could become that serious then.
Exactly, because we're coping with someone who's well, that's not a joke. He's one of the deadliest serial killers and rapists. Knowing what he has done for women who involved in romantic relationships with him, knowing also that he won't get out of the prison. Does it give them excitement, a thrill? How do you explain it? What they are looking for?
I think people, especially women, are fascinated by serial killer. I think that those dangerous bad boys are behind bars and are not able to escape and do something against you. First, it's maybe a control thing. And second, for example, some women are also into assholes. Doesn't matter if they are in prison or not, because they think that they can crack difficult personalities and change them or even heal them, just to feel better for your own benefit, maybe, that you feel good because you support someone. And I think there's a difference between being jail or being free. And I think people feel safe to communicate with them when they are not able to escape, but at the same time, you want to get to know someone who did something what you never would do, just to understand it. And if this murderer additionally is very popular, I think there's the same thing with celebrities. And the difference is that the death row inmate would answer to your letters for sure, because he doesn't have anything else to do and enjoy the attention for something which is even morally unacceptable.
This popularity of serial killers, it's something which disturbs a lot of people in well, just in modern society, a lot of sociologists, but also artists. But nowadays, there's more and more, I feel, series is both documentary and feature about I don't know, about Ted Kaczynski, about Bundy, about more and more about different murderers. How do you explain it? Can we get to know something more about society? Well, talking each other about, well, telling the stories of such a, well, hard criminals.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, this fascination exists already for a long time, I guess. Already in the 70s, when Charles Manson committed murders, and he has been also in mass media, and he had already several women around him. But maybe since there's Netflix and stuff, true crime documentaries became very popular. Maybe because of people want to understand what kind of people are they, or just to get to know the personalities of criminal people.
To get to know something more about what people are capable of.
Yes, and why, the reason, I guess, and also to get to know their real personality. Maybe, I think, and not every murderers are the same, and there were different intentions or reasons why they committed murders.
I'm wondering about all the film of yours. I was looking for some similarities. For sure, they're all showing the, well, okay, obviously average happiness is quite different and more abstract, but all of them are showing, for me, the vulnerability of human beings, how weak species we are. And I'm wondering, do you also, being now in quarantines or lockdowns, do you also think well, about your role as a filmmaker? What films would you like to propose, and what would be them, and what to fight for as an artist after all the lockdowns are over?
Yeah, I mean, I'm back in the office actually, but I have been in the quarantine for the last 2 months, and of course all those jobs got cancelled. So, and also all those film festivals are online now, and there are no way to get to know other filmmakers and distributors maybe. So it's, I'm going through a hard time now, and I hope that it gets normal as soon as possible. And I heard also from other filmmakers that they don't have any chance to get any distributors and sales agents and stuff. So I hope that our films get watched from enough people, and just to.
I'm wondering, this question to all of you, how do you think art can help us in this way of, well, of recovering normality, with coping with all the crises which are ahead of us?
I think one major thing that this crisis has done so far is it's reduced human life to numbers in some kind of a way. And you think that 1,000 deaths is better than 2,000 deaths in that kind of a sense. So maybe it would be interesting for filmmakers to kind of bring back actual human value to life and tell stories that like remind people that, okay, this is what a living person means. This is what, so you don't become numb to the fact that, like, okay, this many number of workers are moving around in India without a home. So, but that doesn't mean anything to you until you actually go into the stories, until you actually go into what that means on a personal level. So like Maya said, that like it's a lot of statistics around us, and we shouldn't reduce humans to statistics, and that's our job, like to make sure that human stories are continuously told through this and after this.
I see.
I think for me, this question will be a bit delayed on one hand, because I have a little child and we had no time really to work, and we had to limit the working hours that we have normally to a very, very different, I mean, there were maybe four hours a day where you could actually do something for your job. So, but what I feel is very important also from the physical part, what will happen if we can move together in a group again, and how will that feel? This is like something that I'm interested in on a personal level, just how will this physical interaction evolve after the lockdown stops, and how will that come back? But I really feel that there will be a long period of just reflecting what there was, and all these different opinions, and what is still to come, and how you want to approach it, and how is your safety feeling. And of course, I mean, worldwide there are a crazy amount of topics that are waiting to be made into films. But on a personal level, I have really this physical thing that I feel it is very strange how this distance thing changed between people, and how is this going to change again, and how is affecting this idea of this 2 meter distance, a 5-year-old boy who just started to have social interactions, and this is kind of what is around my...
Suddenly the other human becomes danger.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know if you, Verena or Christo, you have something to add to it?
I was just thinking, because I'm here now, it's my parents' place, the place where I grew up, and it's in the middle of nowhere. And so I was thinking a lot the last 2.5 months, because here in the countryside, you don't feel the lockdown so much, because also in real when the time is normal, you don't meet a lot of people. It's now the same. And so I met some old people, and they said, like, yeah, they don't feel something because nothing changed. And so for me, I was thinking a lot about the difference from a city and from the countryside during the lockdown. And I always loved the countryside, but after this time, much more again. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because over here it's completely opposite, and I've been at home in the apartment for the last, again, 2.5 months, and it's very, very different, and it feels it's not, I am with my parents, so I'm not completely isolated, but there are a lot of people I know in the city who are living alone, and they are sort of having a difficult time. So I think, like Upamanyu also said, like, these micro level stories is something that could be explored. And even before all this happened, local stories over here in India is something that isn't done much. So that is something that we all try to sort of dig into and tell local stories. And after what's happening, especially, that there will be a lot of that as well. So I think that is something we could look into.
Okay, so thank you so much, and I'm waiting for the new stories of yours, and well, hope we're gonna meet sometime in person.
Yeah.
Hopefully, yes.
Congratulations,
Yeah,
everyone. Stay safe. Thank you.
Yeah, stay safe.
Thank you, Krzysztof.
Looking forward to see all the films.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Hello, it's so nice to see you. I'm here with with the authors, the directors of film Chubby and Polish Pizza. Could you introduce yourselves?
Yeah, my name's Madeline.
And my name is Dusty, and we are both the writer, directors, and producers of Chubby.
A film which made quite a huge impression on me, especially how precise it is, how you made I can feel that you made a huge effort not to say too much, not to use too many words, not to explain too much, and finally not to be so explicit. Was it did you decide that in terms of such a painful film, you have to stick to the rule that less is more?
Yeah, I think that was something we went back and forth on actually in the script, and then when we ended up shooting it, changed a lot, and it became I think it was more important for us to really look at the way this whole thing affected the family rather than the exact nature of what happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think through the process of script development, we quickly realized what was important about the story, and it was about the sort of lingering trauma and that residual trauma, and how it's challenging for this young woman, this young girl, to try to work through that. And I think through workshopping the script and also just through the casting process of finding a really talented young actor, we realized that so much can be conveyed visually and not relying on the explicit words being spoken.
Mm-hmm.
Because what you show is that, basically that trauma is very contagious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we were really interested in sort of what triggers trauma. And so there was this sort of relationship that's happening in the past and the present, sort of speaking to one another. When we hear the sound of the recorder, that kind of triggers a sensory experience for the young girl. It brings her back to a moment in her past.
And a glass of milk, and just the small things that you wouldn't necessarily think would be triggering or would bring back these powerful sensory memories, all the things actually that it can be overwhelming.
Yeah, I think what we were trying to do with the structure of the film is not make it entirely clear to the audience right away that this is the past and this is the present, but rather it feels as if these two things are happening concurrently at the same time, and how powerless the family feels in the present moment. That it's as if this traumatic thing has happened under their watch, but they were unable to stop it. And so that relationship between the past and the present, between trauma and kind of coping mechanisms, trying to work through it, is really, I think, what we were most interested in with the film.
Yes, this sense of, that everyone there is powerless, that everyone knows that something terrible happened, but, no one really, I don't know if no one really knows, but maybe no one wants to know, and everyone knows that something is really wrong there. And this, I think that's also very important, how you show that the whole family is affected by it.
Yeah, I think the idea that once you voice something or once you speak it out loud, it becomes real. That's really prevalent for the family and the family dynamics, that the older sister wants to address things head on, and then the mother really doesn't want to address things, because as soon as you do, it just opens this whole floodgates of this really happened, and then you have to face things. And I think it's easy to keep things quiet, especially for within families. It's sometimes easier to avoid talking about or engaging with really tricky, uncomfortable things that have happened.
Because, dealing with subject, I hope our viewers have already seen the film, so I may say, dealing with such a subject as sexual abuse, it's very difficult. I'm wondering, did you also do research with, victims, psychologists?
This actually, to be totally candid, came from a very personal perspective. So it was something from something personal from my life, and that really kind of informed this, not exactly, but in many ways. It was kind of a working through of a difficult event that had happened that Dusty and I had spoken at length about. So that's really kind of where the story came from.
I think the process of starting to talk about that and work through those past experiences in a way I think was really valuable for both Madeline, but also just trying to get to the root of trauma, assault, and the pent-up aggression and frustration that someone feels. They can't really undo what has happened to them, but they feel kind of stuck. And I think it was just the workshopping of the script and working through the film that helped us kind of explore the topic, again, as Madeline said, from a personal perspective.
Films, I don't know if films are therapeutical. Probably the films aren't really the therapy, but I think it's very important that also you create this environment to speak openly. And I think that's the important in modern culture, that suddenly such a dialogue starts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even with the Me Too movement that emerged sort of around the time that we were making this, the film really is about, even in a time like that, how still terrifying it is to come forward as a victim of sexual assault, and how often victims wish they hadn't come forward. And that's just, again, talking from our own personal experiences. And that's really what the film's about, that this young woman, this girl, sees how this truth, this thing that happened to her, is destroying her family, the fabric of, you know, the relationship dynamics between her sister and her mother. And she wants to take it all back because she feels responsible for, in a way, being this kind of catalyst for what's happened.
And it's inevitable that something like that will have those repercussions when you talk openly about it. But I think one of the reasons that we wanted to make the film is so that people become a bit more comfortable talking about this stuff, and it doesn't become such a taboo thing where people are so afraid. Maybe it will reach somebody who won't feel so alone. That would kind of be the ultimate thing. If someone watched it and they had an experience like this, maybe they just at least feel like there's someone else in the world who's felt the same way.
Well, especially as it's not your first film, Madeline, about rape culture or sexual violence.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think we're really interested in making films that challenge audiences and provoke conversation. So I think that's really our ultimate aim with this film, is that hopefully people just start engaging with these kinds of conversations, and the film asks some really tough questions that, hopefully encourage discourse.
Obviously, you stress that this is a film about trauma, about the victim, about also empowerment of victim, but also in those less than 20 minutes. I mean, the whole film is something a bit more than 20 minutes, but in less than 20 minutes, you show also the whole process of manipulating, trapping the victim, gaining the trust and manipulating. It was also important to you to show how this psychological game which happens before.
Yeah, I think what was really important was to show that even though he does this thing that is so awful, to kind of get the audience to sympathize with him in a way, or to not just see him as this villain. I think it makes it a lot more tragic when we see his human side. Yeah,
it's not as if he's a mustache twirling villain. He's utilizing the kind of power imbalance that's naturally ingrained in a sibling relationship, where you have a young girl who looks up to her older brother. And it's about that abuse of power that we're really interested in exploring, and how he is almost unaware that he's using that power until later, as it kind of unravels and we reach that kind of point of no return. But that complexity of that power imbalance is really quite interesting to us, and it exists in kind of in these familial dynamics, and how it's so easy to take that for granted and not be accountable for your seemingly accountable for your actions. Yeah.
And hopefully people are sort of charmed by their dynamic and their relationship and the fact that they have this really close bond, and then it becomes like it's like the rug being pulled out from under you when he betrays her so viciously. Because
it's such a fine line where like you said, something like this, there's love, there's trust, can easily just turn on a dime if there's that abuse of power, where as you said, using that as a form of manipulation. I think that's really what we're interested in.
And obviously, well, this is a short film, and you can show there the whole process of learning to trust someone again, to love again. But in a way, you finish the film, you end the film in a moment when the girl starts to believe that she can be understood, that she's opening. So we believe that it's also important because in a way you leave hope.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think for us, the end in a way kind of signals that the mother can no longer deny what's happened. Like when she sees her daughter kind of take back what she's recant the confession, but see how vulnerable and how shook she is and how afraid this young girl is. And that culminates in the moment when the brother comes home. We see the kind of grief and anger and confusion in the mother. And I think it's like, well, that's the pinnacle moment. This is the moment where the family will never be the same, but hopefully for the better.
Yeah.
Like I think the hope comes from the viewer's perspective and in terms of their point of view and their outlook in the world. But yeah, hopefully the mother then can't ignore this anymore. She can't keep sweeping it under the rug, and they have to confront this. That's really what the film's about, is about coming to terms with something and how challenging that can be for a family and what it means to really confront the truth.
Funny, but you also depict in quite incredible way this moment when your protagonist, the girl, is somewhere between childhood and adolescence. Like you show in the beginning, the first words you hear is her saying the swear words, and just after, the brother is fixing her toys. From the beginning, you show this very difficult and very fragile moment of life.
Yeah, that's true. I think, and that was conscious. I think some people don't respond well to that because it would have been very easy for us to
make her super innocent and very childlike
and likable, right? But there's something quite nice about, like you said, that there's this fragility. She's in this kind of transformative part in her life where she's really eager to become an adult, but she's still quite innocent. She doesn't realize what it means to go through that transformation.
And she's kind of at that age, like 10, 11, where you start to become aware of sexuality. Mm-hmm. It starts to become real as a girl.
Yeah, and I think that just makes it far more complex, having her be in that very specific period in her life when all of this is happening. And in no way should it invalidate what's happened to her. It's just as tragic, but it makes it a little bit more complicated for the audience to kind of understand the situation. And that's what we're interested in, is really challenging the audience to think deeply about what's happened. And it's really easy, though, to maybe not like her because of those things. Like a lot of feedback we got early on was that they didn't like how vulgar she was. And if she was less vulgar, maybe the audience would really like her more. And that was shocking to us, but kind of interesting that her vocabulary and language would somehow make her less of a victim to what's happened to her, which is quite strange. But again, that only makes the movie more interesting, how quickly we judge people and we devalue their experiences because of their disposition.
It's a similar way to, I think, to a lesser extent, of saying that woman dresses a certain way, so she should get a certain type of attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Well, but then I'm wondering, how did you work with, I know that's probably a question you answered many times, but well, the performances of actors are incredible. But especially, I would like to ask you about the main actress. I mean, what could you tell her? What was she conscious? What film is about? How did you speak with her?
Yeah, we were really quite lucky. Maya Harmon, we found after an extensive search.
Yeah, we looked for a really long time.
Yeah, we auditioned hundreds of young kids, and no one was quite right. And we were at a point where we thought we just wouldn't do the movie because we knew that if we couldn't find the right child actor, it just wouldn't work. But then Madeline put out a call to some friends of hers who teach at a private school for young kids, and she saw this headshot, and it just like spoke to her, this young woman. We reached out to her parents, but they were in Montenegro on a vacation, and we just were able to set up a Skype audition, and we auditioned her for about 2 hours. But what was interesting is that her mom sent a clip, and with her and her brother reading the script. And the blooper reel she included by chance actually won us over. We kind of saw the kind of spark and spontaneity in this young girl, and we realized, okay, this is really the Jude that we've been looking for.
This is the first thing she'd ever acted in.
And we were just really fortunate because we were transparent right from the beginning with her parents and her. And her parents were just really supportive about the film that we were trying to make. And they were very progressive in terms of just sharing with the young girl what was happening in the film, and also empowering her to make choices about if she wanted to do the film, if she didn't, and if she wanted to read all the scenes and how that worked. Like the parents really set the stage, I think, for that. But we were really lucky because they were supportive, they were progressive, and created a really open atmosphere where there was a healthy dialogue between us and the young girl, and just the work that we were trying to make. So there was a real sensitivity to the subject matter in that regard.
But was there also, I don't know, psychologists on the set, or?
So as a part of making a film through ACTRA, which is the union in Canada, we offer it to the parents and the child, and then they can either accept it or decline it, and they didn't feel the need that they wanted a psychologist on set during any of the scenes or during the process of making the film. And
but
so
we were very just kind of sensitive and had lots of discussions about what her level of comfort was.
Exactly. So all the scenes with her where the moment before the abuse actually takes place, that's her and Madeline. So Madeline's standing in place of where the brother would be, so he's not present during those moments. And leading up to those moments, like the parents were literally in the room with a monitor, present. So there was an experience there where they felt comfortable witnessing and watching and being present during the whole experience.
I must admit that even though we're and you're speaking about very serious matters, I can think of how incredible were times when Canadians could go to have holidays and vacations in Montenegro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
But ending, after a film like this, such a films they become very important for a lot of viewers, and frequently they trigger sometimes painful, but in a way, conversations which lead to kind of catharsis. I'm wondering, did people after the screenings confided in you? Did they tell you your stories? Was it also the other adventure, presenting this film just presenting this film at screenings and festivals?
Yeah, I think, speaking personally, I think both of us have felt that this has been a therapeutic, cathartic experience for both of us, working through our own past traumas. We have gone to a few public screenings. We were at the Festival du Nouveau Cinema in Quebec, and we had a few people come up to us afterward. And it's a very awkward thing to have to do. No one really wants to talk publicly, so it's usually after the Q&A, people are dispersing, and then we may have one or two people privately kind of come up to us and say a few nice things, that it's clear that the film resonated with them on a personal level.
A couple of times people have emailed us afterwards and just said we couldn't really talk about it after the screening because it was so kind of vivid and emotional. But then they wanted to say how much it impacted them afterwards.
Yeah, but it is, again, it's such a challenging film that even getting responses, there's a delay, knowing how it really impacted the audience. But it's been great. So we do feel like it is resonating with audiences. And I think depending on the formats, festivals have decided to introduce the film with a warning so that if someone wasn't interested in a subject matter like this or didn't want to have to revisit an emotional, traumatic experience from their past, they would have time to leave. But yeah, I think it's important to engage audiences and have those kinds of conversations, and we're really excited to be sharing it at the Krakow Film Festival.
Yeah, very excited. It's not an easy film, but yeah, we just really hope that people get something from it.
Well, I'm sure they will, although, well, it's a pity they won't have occasion to share their feelings face to face. But I'm very glad that you are here with us via Zoom. And thank you so much, and thank you for the phone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.